Hello, I'm Chelsea Newman, and this is a guided imagery session on corporal punishment. This video is actually the introduction, so we're going to get started in a few minutes on another video, but I really recommend watching this one before we get into the actual work that will come with this session. So let's get started. When we're doing guided imagery, our emotions are chemical reactions in our body, and we are releasing those emotions. And so the way that that works is through water and our breath. So taking really deep breaths, we're going to be doing a lot of that during this session. And I recommend staying hydrated. So drink lots of water. And if you're drinking lots of water, you're washing electrolytes out of your body. So be sure to put electrolytes in your water too. That can be really, really helpful. This is electric work with the body's electromagnetic field that we're doing. So I also recommend having pen and paper for note taking if you are into that kind of thing. I really recommend it. I love science, and science shows that writing things down causes great improvement in our lives, especially when we're working on things like this. So with that being said, let's get into the history. I'm not going to go very deep into this, but I will provide some documentation that supports my claims. So this is something that I've been aware of since, I don't know, honestly, it kind of started in high school. I read some books. The one that's coming to my mind right now is The Color Purple. And I was just really disturbed by what I was reading. And then I started getting into religion, and I converted to Christianity when I was 16. And I saw how Jesus was treated, and I don't know, just the dysfunction in families throughout the scriptures. I was really disturbed by it. And I saw that a lot in families around me as I was growing up. And so I just started asking a lot of questions about it. When I went to college, I was actually studying agricultural education. But when you study to be a teacher, you take a lot of education classes. And so I learned a lot about the history of American education, which is fraught with corporal punishment. And like I mentioned before, books that I read, like The Color Purple, bringing up how, I don't know, corporal punishment, it really started as a way for public humiliation of adults. And so you can think through multiple cultures, but especially of colonialism when we started. I don't know, you honestly, it goes back further than that, because before there was colonialism in the Bible, there was slavery. And I don't know, it's just a lot of people thinking that they were in power of someone else or better than someone else. And I personally am so grateful for the Constitution of the United States, which says that there are inalienable rights that humans are endowed with. And we have our own history, of course, working that out in the flesh that we did not do perfectly. We being our ancestors, for those of you who are American citizens. And I don't know, I've seen how it really stems in this need or drive for power over another human being, and how God teaches us it's inalienable that we don't have power over another human being. We can fall to temptations of the flesh, and but we will receive a reward from it for it one day, is my honest opinion. So in American history, you can see corporal punishment fraught through the history, that it came over from England, but especially in the home between parent and child, it seemed to really tick up in Victorian era. So not very long ago, like early 1800s, is where it really in American history started showing its face in the home. And I don't know, it's just there's a very deep and dark history of corporal punishment. We could talk about it for a really long time, but like I said, I will post sources and you can view them at your pleasure. I wanted to talk about some of those sources for a second and just explain that it has been proven that corporal punishment might show short-term success, but in the long term, it is more detrimental than productive. And I don't know, I posted on my Facebook page a few days ago, we have this board of education that is a paddle board, like you use it to swipe kids' butts. And it was in the school near my house where I lived. We would run cows up these hills, and there's this really old school, one-room schoolhouse, and we would stop there and have lunch, or I don't know, we would play. I remember stopping there and playing when I was a kid, and I just remember this board of education hanging on the wall and being so curious about it. And it was funny. So I posted a picture of something similar to that board that I remember seeing as a child, just asking if people knew what it was. I didn't say anything else. I just said, do you know what this is? And I said that we were talking about it in my personal Facebook group, which is Key Mindset with Chelsea Newman. If you're not a member, you should join. Lots of fun things happening over there. But the results that I got, unfortunately, weren't surprising, but they were disappointing. And I remember some people were saying things like, it's a very unused but needed form of education in our schools today. And a lot of people commenting that they remembered it when they were growing up, and it just, I don't know. It's just interesting to see. I'm okay with the jokes and stuff. I get it. That when we face these hard questions, humor is one good way to face these hard questions in our lives. But I don't know. It does make me sad that it's so ingrained in our system that people really believe that it's something that is necessary. And I don't think that what's happening in American homes right now is correct by any means. But honestly, surprisingly, corporal punishment is more common than we lead ourselves to believe in this day and age. And the studies that I will provide, one of them is from 2020, which was not very long ago. So it says that about 75% of American households resort to corporal punishment in the discipline of their children. So it's more prevalent than I think we like to admit. So corporal punishment has proven to provide long-term negative effects. It's been proven that nearly 2/3 of parental domestic abuse incidents began as acts of corporal punishment. So it's a discipline that got out of hand and resulted in domestic abuse. No, I'm not going to go there. I was going to tell a story of something that's happening in current events, but I'm not going to go there. Corporal punishment in the home is overwhelmingly associated with mental health disorders. You can see it in epigenetics that more and more kids are having things earlier on in life because of the generations and generations of unresolved conflict in the home. And adults are having problems, and it's trying to tie causation or correlation together with something like this is really, really hard to do in psychology, but the results are overwhelmingly common, where someone that either had generations that experience corporal punishment in their home end up with mental health disorders later on in life, or that they were experiencing corporal punishment themselves end up with these mental health issues later on in life. So it's just, take it for what it's worth, I guess. But there is data there that shows that there's overwhelming data that shows that something is going on that corporal punishment in the home and mental health disorders are commonly associated in the same people. So, like I said, I'm going to link some studies. I also wanted to talk about neglect being part of this, that there's a study that I'm going to link that started in the 70s, and it is on rats. And it's just overwhelming how what happened is they caused these rats to begin neglecting their posterity. And if you watch it and compare it to human behavior I'm filming this on February 4th of 2023. So comparing it to modern day civilization and society, it's a little bit eye-opening, just to see some of the behavioral changes and things like sexual attraction or even sex drive itself tied to neglect of mothers, and also aggressive and erratic behavior that come out in neglected rats. So I'll link that study as well. But with all of that being said, I wanted to talk about, so my idea and my goal for this session is to take a biblically based approach to how a child should be disciplined. And if you are not a Christian, or if you don't believe the Bible, that's okay. I ask that you consider it a historical document and forget about the religious part of it. And I still feel like you can garner so much from this session, regardless of your religious identity. And it is a historical document, and the parts of it that I'm talking about can be tied to the historical part of the Bible. And so this part isn't necessarily tied to the historical part. It is tied to the religious part, but a lot of people think that in Proverbs, where it says spare the rod, spoil the child, that means that if you don't hit your child will be spoiled. And what is a spoiled child? If you can think of spoiled fruit or spoiled food, it is rotten and unedible. It can't be used for what it was meant for. It is garbage. It's just, it's not able to be used for its purpose, right? And so if you're spoiling a child, they're rotten, they don't have a purpose. You could fill your own imagination with what a spoiled child might be. The way that this session came about is I had a somatic response to behavior of my child a few weeks ago, and it spurred a memory that I had years ago when I was studying scriptures. I was reading the Book of Mormon. And if you're not Mormon, that's okay. You can still just take this as an object lesson and take what feels true to you from it and leave the rest. But there's a phrase in the Book of Mormon that says it's a vision that a man is having of people going to the tree of life, which represents Jesus Christ. And the way that they're getting there is they're holding onto this iron rod, and it guides them to that tree. And the iron rod is the word of God that is revealed in that book. And so I thought, as I was reading that one day, I thought of this spare the rod, spoil the child. And I thought, does that mean that we are using rod the wrong way? And so I started questioning what rod actually meant in the Old Testament, because I love words. I love etymology. And so what I did was I looked up the Greek and the Aramaic words for rod, which were used at the time of the writing of the Bible and the Book of Mormon. And so the Aramaic, Proverbs would have been written in Hebrew. So, but Aramaic is a mixture of Hebrew and Greek. And at the time, so the Hebrew word is actually Shavat. I have written here that it's Aramaic, but it's actually the Hebrew word. It is a different word for Aramaic. I'll have to go back and check that. So the word that is used in the Old Testament where it says spare the rod, spoil the child, is Shavat, which means scepter. And the Greek in the New Testament for rod is rhabdos, which means scepter. And I thought, okay, so what is a scepter? And I thought, would royalty hit someone over the head with their scepter? Because I know that scepters can be used to, in English culture, they knight a person with a scepter, and they will take it and they will gently press it over their head onto their shoulders or like point it at them. And I thought of Esther touching the top of the scepter of the king in the Old Testament. And I just thought, as I was reading about the use of a scepter, I found an article that compared it to a modern day gavel in US courtrooms. And I thought, well, the judge doesn't take their gavel and hit somebody over the head with it or spank their butt with it. They pound it down with a word of judgment. And I thought, wow, if the iron rod is the word of God and Rabdos or Shavat, to spare the Rabdos or the Shavat is to spoil the child, that goes with the word. And it's like, it's a consequence, and it's that slamming down of the gavel that says this is final, there's no more argument, my word has been spoken, and it is what we are going to do here. There's no argument about it, and they are taken to whatever their discipline is. And I don't think that the US judiciary system has everything right these days, but I do think that there is symbolism in that slamming down of the gavel or hitting of the scepter, where a king would take it and hit their own hand with it, and that would be the judgment. They wouldn't hit the person who is receiving judgment, they would hit it in their own hand. Sorry about that slap sound. And I also thought of how I thought of Moses's staff, because that comes from the same word, the Shavat. And I thought of how, as I was reading, I thought, what do you do with a staff? You lean on it. And if it's the word of God, when you're facing this need to discipline your child, you don't hit them, you lean into the word of God, or you prop yourself up against the word of God. And I thought about how this idea of who holds the scepter has power, and it's not from hitting people, and it's not from people fearing them, as in I'm so afraid of what you're going to do to me that I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. That's not where it's coming from. It's a respect, and that respect goes both ways. And it's what that respect comes from is a common understanding in universal law. And so our job as parents is to teach our children these universal laws. There is a law of cause and effect. There is a law of opposition in all things. And you reap what you sow. That's the law of the harvest, right? So I have an image about starting a horse that's going to be coming up in this session. And I feel like I love that image so much. So we're going to talk way more about this as we go through these images. But the idea is that this day, we are recognizing that what has been happening is not okay. And it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there. And so we are making a conscious choice to change ourselves and afterwards our own family trees, to forgive those who have done wrong and recognize that they were doing the best that they can, and to move forward with a desire to be more in alignment with the Word of God. So if you don't believe in God, we can say to be more in alignment with universal law. I'm really excited about this. I have felt my ancestors gathering around me in the past few weeks as I've experienced preparing this session, and I have felt some really amazing things with them, and an understanding of my family line in a way that I never understood it before. And I'm really excited for this session. So let's, this last line here about the shepherd's hook, I'll talk about that really quick and then we'll get started. So a shepherd's hook isn't used, unfortunately it is. Sometimes shepherds will beat the sheep, but that is not what the hook was intended to be used for. The shepherd's hook was intended with the hook on it because if a sheep is scared or injured, they will reach out and grab them with the hook and pull them towards them for safekeeping. And so I can see this image with our children, like we need to let them experience life and learn, right? But we keep them at a safe distance in which if they are in trouble, we can pull them in and keep them safe, right? And so it's just, I see a shepherd's hook in this same word of Shavat. Like it's not something that is meant to beat someone over the head with. It's something that is meant to bring them in for safekeeping. So when we think about discipline with our own children, we think about bringing them in for safekeeping, really is what it's about, and teaching them correct principles so that they can one day govern themselves. So with all of that said, I'm going to end this recording and we're going to start the session in a new video. So I'll see you over there.